good defense. They've done a great job taking the ball away last year. They got the one in this game on the pick. That's really, I thought they were really impressive just watching the tape over, particularly the end of last season. Thought that they played really well in this last game. Tampa was in the red zone the first 5 trips, got no touchdowns, and were limited to field goals. And so they did a really good job with their third down defense when they needed to. They can affect the passer. They're really good up front. They're really good at all areas, to be quite honest with you, and they're really well coached as well. So it's an impressive defense, and we got to work it out for us.
Zach, Diggs does such a good job at jumping routes. Can you use that to your advantage in some way that he'll take chances?
Like any corner, he's got his strengths. He's a really good player. We got a lot of respect for him. And, so you spend your time studying every player on the defense and how to best try to attack him.
Is the ultimate Swiss Army knife. I mean, what makes him, the guy that he is? What characteristics, what traits?
Because he's really strong at every position that he lines up at. Whether it's a stack linebacker, whether it's the right DN, left DN, over the center, moving around, plugging him as a backer. They got different personnel groupings that are really focused around him too, it seems. And he's just really dynamic. He's similar to a lot of really, really good ones that we've been around. Von Miller's kind of the closest skill set I remember. So he's a really dynamic player. He affects every play that he's a part of. He can get after the quarterback. All of our guys got ready to protect against him because he'll go against about all 5 players at some point, up front. He can really run too. He can run down some runs. He's good in coverage. They got him in man coverage some on some guys. So he's a really versatile player. He's only in his 2nd year, but he's really impressive. It's obvious why he was the defensive rookie of the year because he's that good.
Does that put pressure on your line to communicate throughout the game about with him specifically, just because, like you said, those personnel groupings, the matchups, and things like that?
I think they stress your communication overall, not just involving him, but just overall how their defense operates. They're going to really force the communication, and that's okay. We got to study it and be ready for it.
There's a lot of chatter throughout the week about kind of your tendencies, what shotgun versus under center, how much you run pass, and when you're in both formations. Is that something that, what do you make of that? Kind of what do you feel? How did you feel like that looked on Sunday compared to what you thought?
Yeah, we utilize our game plan, whatever we think is fit for the team that we're playing against, and then we adjust accordingly.
I think there was do you feel like maybe it's a little too do you feel like it's varied enough when you go through it, when you were looking at it, throughout the week? What are your overall thoughts on that?
Yeah, we're just one game into the season, so we'll continue to adjust as we go.
Do you expect Tee Higgins to be able to go on Sunday?
He's making good progress through the protocol, so I can't 100% predict that today. I just know that he's cleared the hurdles so far that he needs to clear.
Is he going to practice at all?
He'll do some limited stuff. He won't be in the team action, but he'll be in the routes on air and their group install stuff.
Joe talked about starting faster. What can you do as a coaching staff to facilitate that? Is there anything, or is it on the player? Starting faster.
We had the turnover on the second play of the game, and then we scored on the next possession. So, we just got to be sound as the game gets started and have a good plan in place to help us score on the opening drive. That's always our goal, and that's just something we need to certainly work towards this week.
Looking at the game tape again, Minkah Fitzpatrick was head hunting pretty well.
Yeah.
He took his shot on Tee. He took one on Tyler Boyd. He tried to take one on Jamar on the back and in the head. But at some point, don't you expect a flag somewhere?
Those aren't things for me to control. You hope the officiating takes care of it, and that's really all I can do.
How much have you seen Awuje develop over the last years? Awuje, since you guys signed him?
Say that one more time.
How much have you seen?
Cheeto. Oh, I gotcha. How much has he developed? He impressed us last training camp when he first got here, and has really been consistent ever since. So to say that there's been one moment that's impressed me more than others, that would be untruthful, because he hit the ground running. He's a pro's pro. He takes it very seriously. He's a student of the game. He's just really, really impressive. And I thought he had a great training camp last year and had a great season. I thought he had a really good training camp this year and is off to a really good start. And that's what we expect from Cheeto, and that's just been the standard that he set for himself.
Do you believe in the concept of a number one quarterback, or it's important across the board?
They all matter, So you start 2 corners and a nickel, and they all matter. So that's for everybody else to worry about. Who's the number 1 receiver, who's the number 1 corner. We know that all of our guys got to be ready to play.
What is it about Jamar's football IQ, Zach, that makes him able to pick up different routes? Joe was talking about you.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how impressive it is for a guy to go 95 snaps and, the humidity that we dealt with, as the rain came and went, and the humidity, I probably lost 10 pounds out there. I can't imagine what he did. But the consistency, we could count on him on the last play of the game, with the touchdown he scored in regulation and all the way through overtime. We moved him like crazy because we were losing guys left and right. And so we just kept moving him around, things that he doesn't necessarily practice, but he's in the meetings, he knows the concepts. And so that shows you just his overall understanding of what we're trying to do, to be able to move him around in the huddle and him to quickly understand what we're trying to achieve and the detail that it needs to be done with is really impressive. And so, you just walk away, not that we weren't already impressed with him, but just even more so for him to be able to do that 95 plays, play all the different positions, and continue to make every play that came his way was really impressive.
And even for, I'm sorry, just to follow up, even for a receiver, would you call his conditioning 95 plays elite?
Elite, yeah. No, there is no doubt about that. You don't want to take that for granted. You don't want to ask him to do that every week. Typically we would not want a guy to play 95 snaps, but just losing T, and then, with some other guys, Trent had the hamstring coming into the game, so we were trying to limit his usage. Some other guys were in and out just with some short-term stuff, and so he was really had to play every snap, and he wasn't a guy that was trying to get out and trying to save. He's that impressive and in really great shape, and that's credit to him.
Just out of curiosity.
Let me. Someone was asking over here for.
You moved him out of need, but when he succeeds, Jamar, you moved him out of need, moved him around.
Yeah.
With him succeeding and doing it, does that open up avenues? Like, do you think, well, maybe we do a little of that when we have everybody around?
Well, we have that anyway. There are things that we want to move him around with. But when you got T in there, there's things you want T to do as well. But when he was out, you wanted Jamar to do some of that stuff. So there's a give and take there where we've got other weapons as well that we want to be able to utilize. But Jamar has obviously proven that he can move around and play every position. I also trust that T and TB could do that as well. I know that they can. And so it's just a really impressive group that just understands the whole picture instead of just their details on their particular position. So.
Yeah, you talked about moving Jamar around and putting him in some concepts that he maybe hadn't practiced a whole lot. His game time touchdown at the very end of regulation there, was that a concept he was familiar with, or was that new for him?
It wasn't something that we'd really repped that week. But we had done that in the previous. He had specifically been the one that primarily did it. So he's got reps doing that. It wasn't necessarily part of the game plan this week. It was just you have to adapt to some of the leverages and matchups you're getting over the course of the game, and that was one we felt like might give us a chance on the last play.
Coach, you talked about Hayden Hurst coming in immediately, blending. I mean, great catch on the sideline,
Yeah.
fighting for first down, blocking. Did he surprise you how quickly he meshed with the team?
No, I think that's a really good tight end room, and he fits in really well with James and Drew and all those guys. So that part doesn't surprise me. I thought he played really physical. And then he did the things like you mentioned in the pass game that were really helpful for us. So, he's obviously a big part of what we're doing, him and Drew. It's a great combination to have. And so I think that they work really well together and will continue to do so.
Last time we spoke with you, Clark was seeking a second opinion.
Yeah.
Did he get a second opinion? Is he out for the year? And
Yeah.
What does this week look like for Cal? Do you implement more special teams portions in practice? Like how do you get him ready to go?
Yeah, him and Darren spend a lot of time together, watching the tape, and then he'll get the practice reps, obviously. I'd say Clark, it's months. I don't want to say the season with 100% guarantee, but it's certainly months. And so we'll just, as the season progresses, you'll have to see where it's at. But, Cal and Darren will certainly spend a lot of time together and get up to speed. And again, we thought very highly of Cal. Clark just does it at such a level that's difficult to beat out, at this stage. But Cal certainly gave a good run at it, and we feel very confident that we've got a good one there.
Joe was kind of saying, I wanted to get the ball to Jamar more this past weekend, but because of the way your guys' offense is structured and all the weapons you have, is there a fine line when you've got a guy who's having a day where just he's playing like that for a quarterback to keep the eye on everything else? Is that a hard thing to think about? You worry about targeted too much when you've got a number one?
No, because we don't just call a play that's just, hey, this is your one option and then the play is over. You know, everything's got progressions built in or pick a side, and Joe does a really good job of understanding a play call may be meant to target Jamar, but it's, you know, the way they're playing their defense, it's just that's not the best option at the moment. Let's go somewhere else. And so, you know, and being patient and checking the ball down too, you know, when it's not the ideal look for some of the things that we want to do. And so you just got a lot of trust in Joe that you can call the concepts the way you want to call it, and he's gonna find the best answer for you. But we also know that Jamar is a premier player. Then you want to try to get him the ball as often as you can. That's usually a good thing when he's got the ball in his hands. Even when it doesn't look like a great look, as long as he's got the ball securely in his hands, usually really good things happen. And so you want to continue to explore that and take advantage of it.
Joe talked about having a Joe ball there.
So I mean, were there plays where you felt like, man, we could have gotten it to him, or did you go back to the tape and see, man, there were even probably 3, 4, 5 more balls that you could have gotten?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily on the calls that we had.
Yeah.
You know, maybe, you know, as you watch, you always, after the fact, say, okay, I wish I would have called this play instead of this play and taken more advantage of it. So, of course, there's always going to be that, whether we won or lost the game, that always comes up.
Joe had talked about having a good week of practice is kind of key, you know, bounce back from last week. Are there things that you may do as a play caller, as a head coach, to maybe get Joe in a good groove to make sure he's feeling really good at practice specifically as you guys start the week?
You know, I thought we had a really good week last week. Obviously, we'll see how this week goes. You know, but I thought our guys really got in a good rhythm. I thought our defense played well from start to finish, and you know they gave up. You know, we had a pick 6 on offense, and so really they'd given up 13 points in regulation, which is pretty strong. You know, that's a pretty good standard to be set, and I thought our offense got into a flow. You know, obviously we had some setbacks with a couple turnovers, but I thought that they really got into a flow and moved the ball a lot. And so again, it's just the consistency of winning the turnover battle. Number one is a big indicator, but I expect our guys to practice well this week, and we'll see how they come out the gates today.
What does a good practice for Joe really look like now that you've seen him for 3 years now?
A really good practice for Joe. I mean, we never want the ball to hit the ground, certainly. It's different for us. You know, it's Wednesday should be a stressful above the neck day for everybody involved. And so Wednesday, there can be an error or two because it's the first, they just heard it this morning. They'll go out there and try to execute it at practice. Thursday, you want things to be a little sharper. There's also a third down element that comes there where there's a couple new third down thoughts that you got to work through, but the base down stuff should be really sharp on Thursday. And then Friday, you tie everything together and you work on your red zone. And, you know, generally you try to keep a core group of concepts in the red zone and you add a couple new wrinkles for the defense you're going to face. And the guys usually should feel pretty good about the stuff that we ask them to do. So to define it for you, I mean, we want completions, we want the ball in time. But there's also an element where some things are new for the first time and it should be stressful for the quarterback, and that's okay.
Looking at your defense, what did the unit do best on Sunday?
I thought they tackled really well. I thought they were really tight in coverage. You know, you think back to the 9 route that they caught. It's great coverage. He just made a great catch. Even on the goal line, Mike Hilton had phenomenal coverage on that slant route where I think it was Claypool caught the ball behind him one-handed. So they made a couple plays, but our guys were really tight in coverage, made it difficult for them, and really gave us a winning performance. You know, we just need to come together as a team and be able to finish that game off.
You said today is a mentally taxing day. You've obviously coached a lot of good quarterbacks. Is there anything unique about the way that Burrow takes the install and is able to process it in terms of, is he like a visual learner? Is he a notorious note taker? Like what is unique about the way Joe's able to digest everything you give him on Wednesday?
I think the way he sees the defense, you know, you install it. He's watched a lot of tape, so he can't predict what the install is going to be necessarily, you know, and it becomes a little more taxing in the run game stuff because the quarterbacks, they watch it and they're in tune for what pass concepts they like and what they've seen on tape. And then Wednesday morning, you present to them the run game. And there's some nuance that comes with that, with checked plays and different fronts they're going to see and pressures. And so that generally is the part that they really have to hone in on and lock in on and you spend time on. And Joe does a really good job processing it because he's watched so much tape and has such a good feel for the team that you're playing that he has a very clear understanding of what you're asking him to do. And then you just invest a couple reps to make sure that it's clean and there's always things that we adjust, you know, as the day goes. Today goes, we'll adjust some things with formations and criterias and things like that as we watch more tape, we can change, and the quarterbacks have to be ready to adapt to that.
I know you expect a lot of nuances or wrinkles to cover two. I mean, every cover two might be a little different from cover two. How many wrinkles, how many different things did the Pittsburgh Steelers throw out there than you may have anticipated? Did you have to make a lot of adjustments?
You just don't know what the shape of the game's going to look like necessarily. What's going to be the theme of the pressures that you see early in the season? That's generally what you got to get a feel for, you know. So they executed well. You know, they were all in phase together. I don't know if they had many mental errors, but it looked like they were in sync and played fast.
Joe used the terms, I think, several times today, defensive structure. How often do you go over defensive structure with him? Like going into a game?
Yeah, that's what we do. Yes, that's all we do. You know.
I want to focus on, but I guess my point is what defensive structure means to you, and if there's something about that term that is specific.
No.
To how you break down.
I think that's a pretty general term. It's just, you know, that he's probably mentioning just all 11 guys. What's the structure of the fronts that we see? What coverage structures do they play? It's not necessarily specifically defining where everyone's going to end up, but you're going to have bodies in areas, you know, and it's just a matter of who they're doing what with. And that's why Joe's good, because he has a great understanding of where people should end up and can see areas better than any of us could do it playing the quarterback position. That's why he does what he does, and we do what we do because he can see it so fast. So you just try to give him the information to work with, and then he can help piece it together once he gets out there on the field, and does a good job communicating with us, you know, on any adjustments we need to make that would help him, and I always appreciate that.
Zach, when the offense wasn't too sharp in the first half to start the season, how much more sharp do you expect them to be in this game? Does that kind of hone in the focus on coming out sharper?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we want to score and build leads early because that allows our defense to play a certain style, you know, where they can pin their ears back and the other team's offense becomes a little more predictable. So anytime we can load up with some points early in the game, it benefits our entirety of our team. And so that's always our goal coming out, is to score early and often. And let the defense play with a 10-point lead, a 13-point lead, a 17, whatever it is. That's a good style of football to play, and our defense is built for that. I mean, we have premier pass rushers. Someone asked me what our defense did well. I mean, they also played the run well, and that really came from everybody up front and at all areas. So I think we got a really good defense, and when we put them in a position to play with the lead, they're going to be tough to go against.
Remember what it was like when you were at Nebraska and there was a game where maybe you didn't feel like you played all that well on a Saturday, what that week was like? What was that like as you got ready for that next week back when you were playing?
That was a long time ago, and I always played perfect. So I had plenty of those Saturdays, and you know, you just have to shake it off quickly, and you're always facing a new defense the next week, and so you know, there's a lot of things that change. Sometimes the game plan changes to where it's more run bit, whatever it is, but. You know, the important thing is you put it behind you. You don't always play perfect, so you shake it off. You try to clean up any of the mistakes you made, but also emphasize a lot of the positives that happened, and we stress that to our guys as well. And you know, just try to capitalize on whatever momentum we created for ourselves to try to capitalize on the next week.
Speaking of Nebraska, Zach, I have to ask you, do you have any thoughts, or have you talked to Scott?
No, you know, it's hard because Scott always treated me so well. I was a player there when he was a GA at Kansas State, and so he was around. That was a short drive for him. He always went out of his way to be really good to me as a former player. So I always pulled for him, and you know, it's disappointing anytime something like this happens. But you know, pulling for the university as a whole, Mickey Joseph has been great to me too. So now you get to pull for him. So that's just the way it goes. But you know, always pulling for those guys.
Coach, is there any intel in like a Cheeto or Lael Collins sharing information about players, maybe tendencies and those things that may prove valuable?
You know, you always ask to make sure you've covered those bases. Sometimes it is overblown, but it doesn't hurt to ask, you know, and try to see what they can give up. And maybe they got something that's unbelievably critical to our success. More often than not, that's not the case, you know. But, you know, those are always bases you try to cover.
Well, you bring up the Jets game from last year as kind of a cautionary tale that second-string quarterbacks in this league are capable of playing really well.
Well, he did it against Minnesota last year. You know, he really had a great performance from start to finish. He had a 2-minute drive to win the game. I think he hit Omari down there with 30 seconds left to win the game and give him a lead. And So you've seen him get into a rhythm and be able to do it. You watch all the preseason tape. It's not like he had a lot of throws in each of the games, but he started each of the 3 games, so you get a chance to watch him that way. He's been there for 5 years, really. So he's invested in the system. He's been with Kellen for a long time. He's been with Dak for a long time. So you expect him to be able to operate the offense the way that they want it operated. And so there's no guy that's really as invested as he is. And so, we expect to see a good player on Sunday and then put him in a position to help their team, try to be effective.
How nice is it to have film of him, though, versus going against some backups? There isn't
Yeah.
film out there. He's played for them.
Sure. Yeah, he has. He's played for them. He's been in the system for a long time. So you know that he knows everything and how they want to do it. And they obviously have a lot of trust in him. Jason Garrett took him to New York with him. And so that goes to show you that they liked him there, and then they brought him back to Dallas. So that tells you a lot you need to know about, a backup quarterback that's in their system.
Talked about how Joe Burrow checks all the boxes. Is one of the bigger boxes what he did in this game? The fact that he didn't play very well to start the game, and it's really hard to pull yourself up by the bootstraps.
Yeah.
And kind of change that whole thing, and he did it from one half to another, in the same game. Is that a big box?
There's no question. However the turnovers come, to be able to refocus on the next play, because it can be deflating. When a defensive end jumps up and picks off a pass, it's kind of like, man, it's one of those days, really. But to quickly put that behind you and regroup and just go try to attack the next drive and get points on the board, and that's what's impressive. That's what you take away from that game. Is we didn't do enough to win, but there was a lot of positives of our guys, losing the turnover battle 5-0, but still fighting and believing that we were going to win the game no matter what. The lessons we learned are we can't lose the turnover deficit like that. We got to find a way to create turnovers and protect the ball better. But there's a lot of really positives to take away from that game as we go forward to the next 16.
How do you think Mike Thomas did? He played 69 snaps. Obviously, that probably wasn't the plan going in.
Right.
So he played a ton of snaps. How did you think he did?
Well, we know he can play a lot of different roles for us. He's been in the system a long time. Made some catches. Obviously, there's the one he wants to have back in the end zone there. But that's kind of what he's done for us. He's been really solid on special teams. He can play a lot of different roles for us on offense. He brings good speed to the table. So he's dependable for us that way.
How similar or different do you expect their offense to look now that Dak is not there? They're going back.
I think Dak is one of the premier quarterbacks in this league, so he's irreplaceable that way. But like I said, Cooper's been there for since 2017, and so I expect the full scope of their offense to be available because he's been there as long as anybody else has, and they'll be able to do a lot of things with him.